Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to talk about something that happened right after the Super Bowl and could be related. Now, warning, we're going to be talking about symbolism and things that certain people think are silly. So if you're that person, you don't need to watch this video. If you leave a rude comment, I'm going to block you. So we had the Super Bowl between Kansas City and within the Kansas City metro area is Independence, Missouri, or in other words, the future New Jerusalem, right? So you have the Kansas City Chiefs. They played against the San Francisco 49ers. I'm not going to go over all the different things that I picked out in that previous video because it took up a whole video to cover it all. But all you need to know in case you missed it is there's been this like ongoing drama with the Kansas City Chiefs and the teams that they've played. But in particular with this last Super Bowl, they played a team which is universally recognized as a very wicked place. And I'm not condemning every person in San Francisco, but San Francisco isn't exactly a center of righteousness. And there's a lot of really bad things centered on San Francisco. Everything from materialism on one side to drugs and, just other stuff on the other side altogether. It's a city that pretty well represents the world, I would say. And they both played each other in another city that would contend for the top spot as far as wicked cities go, a place called Las Vegas, a place that has the nickname Sin City. And there were a lot of you that viewed the game the same way that I did, some that didn't, and that's okay. You don't have to agree with this. But we were looking at the symbols of the game and the implications and the fact that the Lord uses big events, whether they're natural, historic, or sporting events or any other thing where a lot of people have their attention. He can use those things to send messages to you, to give you signs, to prepare your mind for things to come. So that's how I was viewing the game. And I was actually nervous the entire time. I felt like Kansas City was going to win. Last year, they went to the Super Bowl. They played the Eagles. And because of the symbolism of that game, I felt that they were going to win that one. And they did. I felt the same way about this. But the entire game, San Francisco felt like they were kind of leading. They were out in the front, that Kansas City was having to play catch up. And so I had like these two parts inside my mind. One was like, you know what? I think all this stuff with the symbolism is correct. And I think they're going to win this game. But then there was the other part that was like, no, things are not looking good. And this and this and this would have to happen. And me trying to do all the, what Kansas City would have to do to win and being worried and nervous. Well, I just waited to see what happened. And I trusted that the interpretation was right. I'm not saying that this is doctrine. I'm not saying that I called the game, but that's kind of like how I was viewing the game. And what happened was in the last 3 seconds of the game, after they'd gone into overtime, in the last 3 seconds, they scored the winning touchdown and they won the game. So whether this game meant anything or not, you can still use this as an analogy to, I think, the second coming. How all of us know, all of us know at some level, I hope, that the second coming is actually going to happen at some point. And we're living in this world. Persecution is on the rise. The world is getting crazier. It's becoming a much more dangerous world. And we're in this like situation where we're getting like kind of nervous, and it seems like wickedness is increasing, that evil is winning in the world, and we're playing catch up. But I think that just like the Super Bowl, before we know it, and, for all I know, we might be in overtime right now. I feel like we probably are. But before we know it, all of a sudden, at the last second, the Lord is going to win. He's going to come. He's going to assume the kingdom. He's going to be king. The wicked are going to be destroyed. And it's going to be game over. And that's probably how we're going to experience this. Like, we're going to feel like, oh my gosh, we're just playing catch up. We're playing catch up. But then at the last second, we win. So Anyway, if you want to look more into the symbolism of the Super Bowl, go watch that video. Just go to my channel. It's a few videos back. I did it before the Super Bowl. So as it happens, okay, thinking about the 49ers, remember the 49ers were those that were part of the California Gold Rush. In 1849, they went to California searching for riches and gold and wealth and treasure, a materials pursuit, not casting judgment on each 49er, but just generally speaking, a group of people that were trying to, find fortune, right? So a worldly pursuit. Well, 2 days later, so the Super Bowl was on the 11th. I think I don't have anything up here, or I don't have this up to talk about anything having to do with Judaism. I just have this calendar up. So the Super Bowl was on the 11th, and 2 days later, you have this story that comes out. This was actually published on the 14th today, but it actually took place yesterday. Turkey rescuers battle to save workers trapped in landslide-hit gold mine. So there was this gold mine collapse, and I have one video of it. I have a couple other ones. You'll have to go to my X account, though, if you want to watch those, because I think that they might be like news videos, so I could get a copyright strike if I do that. But this is from Volcaholic. It's somebody recording it with their smartphone. And you see this like just collapse. And it's kind of weird because it's like it's flowing as though it's like a river or something like that, rather than dirt and sand and whatever else. But it's just like flowing down like a river. And there were people that were there. This was an active gold mine. So in the Super Bowl, the 49ers lost. This is the second time that they've lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. The other time was in 2020. And now I think in this very important year, 2024, it happened again. And 2 days later, you have this that took place. And there's some interesting details in this story that I want to share with you. Before I do, in case you haven't heard, there was an incident today in Kansas City. They were having the Super Bowl parade because they won the Super Bowl. And there was a shooting that took place. Thankfully, only one person died, and it wasn't more, but there were 22 wounded from this. And there's a few news sites that have these live blogs because it's still, fresh basically. But my understanding is that it's pretty much resolved at this point. They caught the people. There were 3 people that were involved in this. And so you had this happen today, which is weird. But then we have this going on in Turkey with the gold mine collapse. Now, before I get into the story, let's just remind ourselves, almost exactly 1 year ago, in Turkey, there was a big earthquake. It killed almost 60,000 people. And it was so powerful that it split this Mount of Olives in Turkey into 2 and created this big chasm, something that I think we can expect to see when Christ comes to Jerusalem, to the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. I take this very seriously because it's not every day that you have mounts of olives cleaving in twain. But here we literally see that happening. And it happened. Let me go to my Google Earth. So this is where that Mount of Olives was cleaved in twain. Oh, you know what? Sorry, I was looking at the date on the news article. So we're past the 1 year mark. The 1 year mark was February 6th. So that happened exactly, or almost, well, it happened a year ago. And then the gold mine is actually up here. It's interesting to note that the Mount of Olives that cleaved in twain was pretty well, like almost exactly, well, not exactly, but if you go this way, if you consider this like traveling north along the Mediterranean coast, then it's basically right north of Israel as you're traveling along the coast. Not too far. When you zoom out, you can see it's relatively close to Israel and Jerusalem compared to the rest of the world. So anyway, let's not forget about this and not treat this lightly. If I were you, I would not treat it lightly. Okay, Turkey rescuers battle to save workers trapped in landslide-hit gold mine. Turkey is under pressure to shut down a gold mine buried by a massive landslide, as hundreds of rescuers battle to save at least 9 trapped workers. So everyone say a prayer for them that they'll be rescued and make it back to their families. The Union of Chambers of Turkish Engineers and Architects said on Wednesday that the government should close the Copper mine in the eastern town of Ilik immediately. The union said, now listen to this. If we're looking at this as like a metaphor, if we're looking at this symbolically, if we're looking at this as like a foreshadowing of the world, the destruction of the world, the union said its past warnings about a looming disaster had gone unheeded. And you guys, I don't need to tell you, you're probably watching my channel because you're more or less on the same page as I am. You feel like the second coming is soon. And we see President Nelson and the other 15 talking about the second coming, giving warnings. In fact, my last few videos, we've talked about some very serious warnings from President Nelson himself, things that he's repeated. And they've been saying it ever since he became president of the church. He's been saying it. And I feel like there's people, I'm sure there's people in your life, there's people in my life where it seems like the warnings just go over their heads. They don't pay attention. They have this like attitude. It's like, oh yeah, they always say that. And they think that because they don't put in the work to study the words of the prophets. They don't, or even if you don't like do like a very serious study, I feel like if you just kind of pay attention, you realize that there's a difference between President Monson's presidency and President Nelson's, and a difference between President Hinckley's presidency and President Nelson's in terms of second coming talk. There is. You don't have to do a deep study, but when you do, like what I'm doing, you realize he brings it up all the time, and he says some pretty incredible things that have never been said before. He cites scripture that's never been cited before, such as October 2022, when he cited the Joseph Smith Matthews scripture that talks about the sign of the Son of Man. It's never been cited before, at least not going back to 1942. He's the only one that's done it since that time. He called on us to be the people of the second coming. He said that time is running out. He says all these things, and yet there are people that either don't really believe it's going to happen, and they just go about their lives just like gold miners, right? And again, this is not a statement. This is not a judgment on these miners. We're looking at it symbolically. The symbol of, living this life, trying to survive the way that we do, earning money, so on and so forth. So you have these people in the church and outside the church that are just like, they're living their lives, playing the game of life, trying to do well financially, take care of their wants and their needs and their comfort, and searching for luxury things. But, just blissfully unaware or just outright ignoring what President Nelson is saying about the second coming. So this whole story right here, especially after the Super Bowl and all the symbolism behind that, it fits really well with the situation that a lot of us are in. Some are listening, some are not. The union said its past warnings about a looming disaster had gone unheeded. Quote, all those responsible for the disaster should be held accountable before the judiciary, end quote. Well, then it continues. All environmental impact reports should be canceled and the plant should be closed immediately, end quote. The rescuers were deployed to search through cyanide-saturated soil. Oh, that sounds great. To save the workers trapped when 10 million cubic meters of sludge rolled over their open pit on Tuesday. So sludge. I don't know exactly what that is. Is it just like rocks and dirt and water? Basically, maybe, well, cyanide, I guess, in this case as well. Interior Minister Ali Yerlikaya said on Wednesday that some 1,700 search and rescue personnel, including police and military teams, mine rescuers, and volunteers, were deployed to find the mine workers. Of the 9 missing, 5 people were believed to be, were believed to be in a container hut, 3 in a vehicle, and 1 in a truck. He said at the disaster site. An investigation has been launched, and the authorities said on Wednesday that 4 people, including the pit's field manager, had been arrested. All right, cyanide. Oh, that's just great. Rescuers have been searching through a cyanide-laced field in the area located in Turkey's mountainous Erzincan province to find workers. Environmentalists fear that cyanide and sulfuric acid used in the gold extraction process could spread into the Euphrates River. Now, this brings a whole new layer to this event. We're going to look at that. We're going to be looking at the book of Revelation and the Euphrates River. I recently did a video, I want to say probably like a month ago, about the Euphrates drying up. But just hold on. Which runs from Turkey to neighboring Syria and Iraq. The Ministry of Environment, Urbanization, and Climate Change said in a statement that a stream leading to the Euphrates was closed to prevent water pollution. Erzincan Governor Hamaz Aydoğdu, I don't know, said there was no leakage into the waterway. But the Ilnik Nature and Environment Platform, a local pressure group, said the stream had already mixed with the Euphrates. So I guess that's up for debate or if they have proof, but they're saying that it's already mixed. So I don't know. Quote, "Don't seal off the stream, seal off the mine," the group said. So I suppose that this is some kind of like environmental group. So, but if what they're saying is true, then you have this nasty stuff that's gotten into the Euphrates River. Okay, so Book of Revelation, chapter 16, verses 12 through 16. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates. Now, hopefully you know, I don't tend to do what some of you do, and it's fine that you do this, but I don't tend to like get really nitty gritty when it comes to the 7 vials, the 7 trumpets, the 7 seals. There's people that think it's possible to say specifically exactly where we're at. And we know that we're not here because this hasn't happened, or we know that we are here because that has happened. None of you know. Okay. I'm just going to say it. None of you know. You may know, but you don't know on good authority, because neither you nor I are prophets and can make such a proclamation. It doesn't matter how clear it seems to you how things are supposed to happen. We can't say that. We're not prophets. We can't speak for the whole church or for the whole world and declare these things. So things may have happened or they may not have. And me personally, when I read these things, I don't tend to think of them as like sequential events, except for like the seals. But even with the seals, I think people try and get too chronological and like say, do a timeline and figure out where we're at on the timeline. And I don't think that's right. But so that's my frame of mind as I'm reading this. I think that a lot of these things just happen simultaneously, especially when it comes to the vials and when it comes to the trumpets. Not so much the seals. The seals are chronological, but these other things, I don't think so. Okay, the 6th angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of the great day of God Almighty. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. And he gathered them together into a place called, in the Hebrew tongue, Armageddon. Okay? So when we're talking about vials, again, there's like 7 vials. I don't know that this is a literal thing, although as we're thinking about this story in the Euphrates River, it's almost as though a nasty vial of stuff has been poured into the Euphrates River. I'm not going to go so far as to say, oh, this has been fulfilled. It's just interesting, and I think that we should take note. When we go to the student manual for this chapter, Revelation 16, it says, the vials of the wrath of God are poured out. In Revelation 16, John describes the scourges and plagues that will be poured out in the final days prior to the second coming of Christ. These plagues are summarized in the following chart. And when we get down to this one, it says, 6, the waters of the Euphrates River dry up to prepare for the gathering of the kings of the world at Armageddon. And then I wanted to read this really quick. Revelation 16:16, gathering in Armageddon. The name Armageddon is derived from the Hebrew Har-Megiddo, meaning the mountain of Megiddo. The valley of Megiddo is in the western portion of the plain of Esdraelon, 50 miles or 80 kilometers north of Jerusalem, and is the site of several crucial battles in Old Testament times. A great and final conflict that will take place near the time of the second coming of the Lord is called the Battle of Armageddon, because it will begin in the same locale. The battle that will begin at Har-Megiddo will spread to Jerusalem. Now, we have this war that's going on right now in Israel, and it actually started down here in Gaza, right? But things, things are more or less kind of wrapping up here. Well, maybe not wrapping up, but like the main intensity of the ground invasion is pretty much over. And now it's a more low intensity thing. They're still hunting for, what's his name? I think his name is Sinwar, the leader of Hamas. And they're going into Rafah right now, which Egypt, in the video I did about Jimmy Carter and the Italian, the son of the last Italian king, there was an article that said that Egypt is threatening to basically nullify or drop out of the peace agreement that's been in place since the time of Jimmy Carter if Israel goes into Rafah. So this is something to watch, but things are heating up here in the north. Okay, so North Israel. When we talk about Armageddon, yeah, it may be that literally some big event happens here, or that it's like the central place of a war. But, when we're talking about North Israel, Israel's a small country. So when you have stuff going on up here with Hezbollah, and if things like spill over, it's not going to be too long before they're in Armageddon. Like, say that things really escalate. Say that Hezbollah, along with Iran, maybe somebody else, if they actually start to invade, it wouldn't be too much for them, I don't think, to get down into here, relatively speaking. Israel is very strong. There would be a lot, but I'm talking about just like distance. So anyway, there's news coming out today that has to do with this front with Hezbollah. The Israelis are wanting to get things back to normal, so these people that live along the border can come back home and get back to work and resume life. But this area right here, and if I remember right, I think it's 5 kilometers along. There's like a 5 kilometer zone. If you're within 5 kilometers of the border, you have to evacuate. And Hezbollah just won't stop, and so Israel is losing patience and is about to make it stop. And there was a big escalation today. Let's see, where do I got it? Right here, Washington Post. This is dated today. Israeli jets hit Lebanon in heaviest strike since Gaza war began. Let me read a little bit about this. Beirut. Israel on Wednesday launched its longest and heaviest attack on neighboring Lebanon since the start of the Gaza war, striking several locations in the south, killing at least one Hezbollah fighter and 3 civilians, and raising further the specter of war between the two long-standing enemies. Israeli fighter jets began, quote, an extensive wave of attacks in Lebanese territory. Israeli Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari announced as the strikes were underway, saying details were to follow. The action followed a morning attack launched from Lebanon into the northern Israeli town of Safed that struck a house and an Israeli Defense Forces base. 1 Israeli woman was killed and at least 8 people were wounded, said Ilana Stein, a spokesperson for the National Public Diplomacy Directorate. She blamed Hezbollah rocket fire. Quote, this can no longer be our reality, she said. So I don't know what's going to happen from here. This is brand new, but it seems all but inevitable that all-out war is going to take place between Israel and Hezbollah. That's what I hear all the experts saying across all the different news outlets. I think it's going to happen. And so we're talking about a war that is now going to be in the north and therefore closer to Armageddon. Again, I don't think that Hezbollah by themselves would be able to push into Israel. But if things keep getting crazy, who knows what's possible and who knows who will join. So we'll just have to wait and see. But this is happening as you have this gold mine collapse in Turkey and this toxic sludge that's going into the Euphrates River. So it's if there is a literal fulfillment of vial being poured into the river and whatever, maybe this is it. I don't know. And as far as the river drying up, I've done videos about that before. This is a new article. I haven't seen this one yet. This is from February 8th. Is the Euphrates River drying up? And the answer is yes. Yes, it is. At least downstream in Syria, it's really drying up because Turkey is like they control the river upstream, and they're kind of like hogging the water for themselves and filling their reservoirs, which makes it harder for Syrians. You know, they have like no control. Like, what are you going to do? Invade Turkey and to take control of the Euphrates so you can have water? So that's one reason why it's drying up, but it's also just drying up because, because the planet is warming up. I do think that the planet is warming up, but I don't think that it's human caused, like they're always trying to shove down your throat. I think this is supposed to happen. I think that the world is preparing to become a paradisiacal world. It could just be flat out be, punishments from God, So anyway, so we have kind of like a vial-like event, stuff going into the Euphrates that shouldn't be there, that's poisonous. And at a time when the Euphrates is drying up and there's issues. And then you have this today, this, just a couple days after the mine collapse. And a couple days after the Super Bowl, where you had all that symbolism. Another thing to consider when we're thinking about northern Israel is, I don't know if you saw it, but I did this video about, and this made news not just in Israel 365. Israel 365 does a good job covering like things of religious significance. But Haaretz, which is a secular newspaper, they even took note of this ultra rare white rainbow spotted in northern Israel. And then, of course, Israel 365 took note. So here it is. You can't see it very well. It's basically a rainbow that forms when there's fog. And because you don't have larger water droplets, it doesn't scatter the light the same way. I think there's like more refraction. I can't remember the exact explanation, but it is an actual rainbow. It's just that you don't get the colors coming through. You can still kind of see color. You can just like search it up on Google for white rainbow or fog bow, like FOG, fog bow. And you'll see some pictures where you can kind of see a little bit of the red at the top, like on the outside, and a little bit of blue in the inner part. But anyway, it's classed as like a separate type of phenomena from just regular rainbows. And it's rare in Israel. According to Haaretz, it's ultra rare. So this just happened just a little while ago in northern Israel. This article is from the 11th of February. So that was the day of the Super Bowl that this was published. This happened on Friday. So this was just 2 days before the Super Bowl. Right here. Friday the 9th. So that's something to take note of, I think. We read about how the Jews interpret white rainbows, and it has to do with the imminent arrival of Messiah. I think the Lord is preparing their minds for the second coming. And then a year ago, April of 2023, so just 6 months before the war started, there was an unusually bright meteor seen over Israel, as some report hearing blast. So this was a very rare occurrence as well. Not only was it seen, but it was heard. It was accompanied with a boom. So all of that together made this a very rare event. And then 6 months later, you have the war that started, potentially the final war, Gog and Magog, which will include the Battle of Armageddon as well as the Siege of Jerusalem. So just 6 months before, and during a time of the year, April and October, they're significant. They're significant in our church. That's when we have our general conferences. But it also has to do with the harvest and the Jewish feast days, because you have the feast days that are in the spring, and then you have the feast days that are in the fall. And they typically fall within, April and October. Sometimes September, sometimes May, and whatever, March. But mostly centered on April and October. So this meteor in April, 6 months later, the war started in Israel. And this meteor wasn't in southern Israel, it was in northern Israel. So in other words, probably not too far or possibly directly over the Valley of Megiddo. White rainbow, meteor. So I think that we should pay attention to these things. I don't think it's random. Don't think it's coincidences. I think they're for people that have eyes to see, so you can have a general sense how close the second coming is, and to start taking things seriously. Maybe make some changes in your life to not be caught unaware. Like Christ said, if the man of the house knew when the thief was going to come, then he'd make sure that his house wasn't broken into. And that's what we can do. We can't know exactly when he's going to come, but we should be aware that it's coming soon and that time is running out. President Nelson literally said time is running out 5 years ago in the April 2019 General Conference. So that's what I have to share with you today. Just another thing, I'm going to have to put this on some spreadsheet. At the very least, I'll put on my second coming timeline spreadsheet. But I think this is significant enough to look back on and remember. I mean, gold miners. They weren't mining copper or silver or diamonds or whatever. It was gold. So, all right, well, that's going to be for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.